So we are starting a new parak today. Right. So we're moving away from the issues we were dealing with, waterways and sewage and our sewage the last couple of days. Now we're moving on to the parak Kol, which is talking about starting talking about the roofs. So let's get started on the roofs. So Kol Hagagot Ha'ir Reshut Achad. So all of the roofs in a city are considered to be one rishus. Vilvad shlo yehei gag gavoa asara or namuch asara. Divrei Reb Meir. So this would be. So when would this be the case? Whenever the roofs are within 10 tefachim of each other. So we're assuming here that so basically we're viewing it basically to be a series of townhouses with more or less flat roofs that connect. The question is, how far apart are the roofs? Here, let's see here we go. So I'm going to share a photo to give an example of what this would have looked like. Here we are. Okay, everybody can see that. So that's what we have. Okay, this picture right here, a whole series of roofs going along a row, and then there's more or less straight shot between each roof, nice and easy. So in this scenario, this is what we're saying is assuming that the back gap isn't too big. That's when we say it's all one area. That's Reb Meir's opinion. The Chum say no. I don't care that you can easily hop from one person's roof to another person's roof. If they're distinct people's roofs, then that's that. So Reb Shimon Omer Echad Gagot Vechad Chatzirot Vechad Karpefot. Reshut Achad Hein L'Chelim Sheshavtu L'Tochan Lo L'Chelim Sheshavtu B'Toch BAYT. So Reb Shimon also says. So Reb Shimon says similar to this about us unifying Rishuyot, that all the roofs, courtyards, and storage areas, right? Those enclosures we have, they're called kapefot. So they're all considered to be one reshut. They're all considered to be one domain. And in terms of that's in terms of for the items that were within them. Right? So as in, they're considered to be one thing for the kelim that you left out in the yard, or that you left on your roof. That you wouldn't have a problem with having moved reshuyot, assuming that you're not actually in any other way violating the different reshuyot. So similarly here too as well. Okay, so those are the cases we have. Which areas can we call one? Which can we not? So Yativ Abaye bar Avin, Rabbi Chanina bar Avin, Yativ Abaye Gabayu. Okay, so we have Abaye the son of Avin and Chanina, as well as the Beit that we know, right? We're all sitting all together. Okay, so these are sitting down and they're talking. Here's what they're talking about. The Kamri, Bishlama Rabbanan Savri Kishem Shadurun Chalukin Lamata Kach Yurnukuk Lamala. So I understand why the Chachamim say it's all separate because, well, if the property below is separate, then of course the roofs are separate because that's how we would distinguish between the two of them. Ella Rabbi Meir, Micah Savar, but how about Rabbi Meir? How does he say they're all one rishus? Ika Savar Kashem Shadirin Chalukul Mata Kach Dirin Chalukul Lamala My Rishadachadhain. If he thinks that the roofs are follow the houses, then how could you call it one rishut? The Ika Savar and Chalukin, and if he says that you don't differentiate based on people living below, the Chol Mala Ma'asar Shutachadhi, Afilu Gag Voa Sar Varamucha Sar Nami. But if you think that it's nothing to do with people below, then who cares about the height difference between my roof and the other roof? Like, it's all still one rishus. Sure, it's a little awkward, but would that really be an issue? So Amar Lahu Abaye, so then Abaye says, I've got the answer for you. Lo Shmiel Achu Had Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Abdimi, Omer Hayar Rimeir, Kol Makom Shatam Motzei Shtei Rishuyot V'hen Rishut Achad, Kagon Amud Rishut Hayachid, Gvoa Sar Avracha Barba, Asur L'Chatef Alav, Gzer Mishum Tel B'Rishut Harabim, Achanami Gzer Mishum Tel B'Rishut Harabim. So you're right. On a midah right to level, if they all should be considered to be one rishut according to Rabbi Meir. That's what we heard from the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, quoting the saying that Rabbi Meir used to say. Like, you're right. So, but the issue is there's something else involved too. That when there's two rishuyot, let's say there's two Rishut Yachids in the same area where there should really be no issue of carrying there. We say there's a problem with carrying there because of, let's say the case given is if you have, let's say, a pillar in a courtyard. So why won't we let you use that courtyard? So use that pillar. In this case, even though they're both considered Rishut Yachids, because people might get confused and think that you're allowed to use to lean upon the pillar located in Rishut Harabim. Sorry, the tel, meaning there's a mound of some sort. It could be a pillar, it could be something else. The issue is that if people notice that oh, I'm in Rishut Yachid now, and I can adjust my package now on this pillar, therefore the Torah, I can do the same thing of adjusting things while I'm in Rishut Harabim and putting them on top. So that would be a problem. Okay, so again, all that is always assuming that when you're adjusting your pack or Rishut Harabim, that you're not like really adjusting an actual load you're carrying, because that would be usher to do. In Rishut Harabim, they're most likely referring to the case where you are adjusting your, thank God the weather outside is nice. Let's say the weather is not quite as nice. You're wearing tons of coats, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, like I need to readjust this. I'm like it's too tight or whatever. So you want to put it down and then readjust. So that scenario, that's what they're worried about. You're making that mistake. Because that would be a pretty bad one. Again, here's our nice little, that's not our Amud, that's the next thing. Okay, we'll get there in a bit. Okay. All right, so again, so right now, so that's what we covered so far. So now we're going to continue on in a similar vein. So Savor Mina, Afilu Machteshet, Afilu Gigi. And Abaye and Chanina Bar Avin, right, explain not only that, but even if there's a he applied it also to a mortar or a vat, right? So here we go. So let's see the picture of those things. So this is the Amatari Chaim. I guess we don't have a picture of them. Basically, we've got a. Okay, so think like a large mortar. Anything that's big enough, even if let's say it normally would have been a kli, but it's big and heavy and hard to move. That if it's big enough, it reaches our 4x4 and 10 tall. Let's say an overturned garbage can for the modern example. So that would be a problem. So Amar Lahu Abaye, Hachi Amar Mar, Lo Amar Rimeir El Amud V'Amat Harechaim, Hoil V'Adam Kovei Elahen Makom. Now the Beit says no, that's not correct. What Abraham was assuming now, but even these other items. It's only the case for something that's truly large and heavy and hard to move, such as a pillar, which again, normally you can't move a pillar very easily. They're made of stone, really hard to move. Or if you had the base of a millstone. So, which are, if you've ever seen one in person, they're quite heavy, right? Because they're designed to just be a place while you move a much larger rock on top of them, so that so you can grind things in between, and that would be an issue. So only for the things that you can't move would we allow you to do that, but for things that would be able to move, we won't let you because we're afraid that you're going to end up making a mistake. Right, but these things again, once you set up your pillar, once you set up your millstone, you're not moving it. It's there until you're forced to move from extenuating circumstances, but you would definitely not plan on moving it again because, well, you can't really move it. Okay. So now we're going to discuss other issues that related to this that should be the same. So that should we say that this is an issue and we should be allowed to put things on top of it or not? So wait, but what about the case we had? If we have again, so this is the lower picture of the diagram, bottom right. We have a right. So we've got our nice wall going on between two courtyards. So and that's definitely fixed in place. It's a wall. Amar of Yehuda, Keshetim Selomar, L'Divri B'Meir, Gagin Rashut Latzman, Chatzer Rashut Latzman, Karpifot Rashut Latzman. So, right. So when this is the case, so you would think that they should be united, but here we're saying that this wall is a separate rishus, just like the roofs, the courtyards and the enclosures would be. So the question is, what about using this wall? Should you be allowed to or not use this? Just like, is it similar to the case of the amud, and therefore it's usher or not? So my law, the share the tute del kotel. So wait, so does this mean that you're not wait, are you not allowed to use this so if this is the case, if they're all distributed on Rosh, so shouldn't you be allowed to carry between one courtyard and the other one by means of this wall? So right, so does that you maybe say that all courtyards are all the same area? That would seem to contradict what we said earlier about the fact that you're not supposed to go on top of another rishus because it looks like a tail. It looks like a raised area in Rishut Harabim that you're going to end up violating. So what should you do? So Amar Rav Huna bar Amar Rav Sheshet. So what did Rav Huna say in the name of Rav Sheshet? No, it's not that you're supposed to that all of us are to one area in terms of you're being able to pass things over walls. Rather, it means that there's an entrance between these two courtyards. That this item you're allowed to carry from this courtyard to the courtyard, even though they're two different reshut yachids, the way we've been exploring for the most part. But in this case, for the kalim, we'd say that you're allowed to move the kalim between the two of them. Yeah, don't worry, we don't pass in that way. But that's his opinion. Chachamim say each and every courtyard or rooftop is its own separate area. Yitmar. Rav Amar ein metal limbo el arba amot. Shmuel Amar mutar l'taltel b'kulo. So now within the roofs, we say each roof is its own separate rishos. The question is, are you allowed? To what extent are you allowed to use that roof? Okay, so again, so we're on the roof here. The question is, how far are you allowed to use? Are you allowed to use? Right? Do you get your whole roof, or are you going to lose off part of your roof because of the person next to you's rishut? Someone would have had if there are two different chatzerot. Right? So what's going to be the case? So Rav says you only get arba amot because the person next to you having rights at being able to use his is too close to yours. Therefore, we end up treating your roof as if it's as similar to the case of Rishut Harabim. You do dalat amot, which is not quite as useful for your roof because hopefully your roof is bigger than 2 meters by 2 meters, and therefore you don't get full usage of it. But Shmuel Amar mutar l'taltel, but Shmuel lets you carry on your whole roof, within Chacham's opinion. So the question is, well, why would you say like Rav and why would you say like Shmuel? So now we're trying to figure out which cases they're arguing and why you'd say in each direction. So mechitzot hanikarot t'chulei al malot pligi. If you all have your own separate roofs, but you put a nice fence in between your house and the person next to you's house, nobody would argue that you're allowed to use your whole roof. Ki pligi b'mechitzot she'enan nikarot. Where is the issue? When there are walls that it's unclear whether or not where you transition. So that's where you say here. So you see the diagrams there. Oh, looks like my computer is dying. I'm gonna have to charge it in a second. Okay, let's just finish this idea. So again, here's if you're in a case like this or like that, where it's not really here. The question is, here? So what do we mean by nikarot versus not nikarot? So when you say that they're not nikarot, it means that basically it's a very smooth transition between the two of them, and you wouldn't necessarily notice. So when we say, what do you mean by recognizable? So for that, Rashi says, She'en abatim uchubarin v'yesh avir benahem mechitzot abatim nir'in l'omdim alagag k'shemestaklim tachat ragleya. Right. So yes, it's not like a dangerous distance between the two of them, because then you'd be required to put a wall up because of tasem akelagagecha, put a fence around your roofs. So again, it's not that big of a gap, but it is a gap such that like that if you decided to look down, you would notice that there's a gap there. Let's say getting a very small gap, but enough of a gap that way you would get not enough that you could fall through or anything like that. Let's say again, let's say so for exact measurements, let's say a couple centimeters, right, to the point where nothing, you can't fall in, you can't get hurt, but if you're looking down, you're like, I can tell exactly where my roof ends and your roof ends. But as opposed to the case where they're all, let's say you had 5 people in an apartment building with one nice smooth roof on top. So then it'd be like, so then yes, each of you have your own distinct zones, like on top of where you live. But on the other hand, if you were to look, if you were to be walking from one to the other one, you would have no idea when you cross, because it all looks like a smooth transition. Okay, and then how about Rav? And how about, okay, so a second, let me just plug in okay, 1 second. Okay, so now we're back to Rav's opinion. So Rav Amar, Ein metaltalin ella ba'arba amot. So now within Rav's opinion, where he argues, so why does it say only 4 amot? Lo Amar gud asik mechitzda. So he doesn't say that the walls from below extend upwards. Again, gud asik mechitzda is that when you say that the walls over here, we say that they go all the way on up, right? Even though you can't necessarily see them. So Rav would say, no, you don't say that the walls go up unless there's an actual wall there. But Shmuel would say that no, you extend the partitions below, above, even if you can't see them above, you say that it's if they're going all the way up. Okay, so this is not, again, so this is all of this discussion is separate from the question of, do you need to put a fence around your roof? Because the answer to that is, if your roof is 10 tefachim off of the ground, you would definitely need to put a fence around it if there's any way of access for use to the roof. Okay. So far, so good. We were understanding our roofing issues. Okay. So Tanan. So we mentioned the Mishnah for Chamim Omrim Kol Echad VeEchad Rashut La'atzmo. So now we're seeing which one of the opinions works best between with the Chachamim's opinion and the Mishnah. So when we say each one is separate rishos, so Bishlamala Shmuel Necha El Rav Kasha. So I understand why Shmuel says they're each separate rishayot, and he says good asik, meaning that we extend the walls all the way up for all of them because they're all separate rishayot. That works great with Chachamim's opinion. How about Rav? Why would Rav say if they're all separate rishayot? Why on earth can you carry in your whole roof? So Amar be Rav Mishbeit Rav. So the people who had studied in the school of Rav answered on his behalf that here's what Rav had said. The worry is that you're going to end up carrying 2 amot in one roof and 2 amot in the other roof, and then you'll have inadvertently ended up going too far and have violated because then you'll be into the other person's rishus and walked too far in their rishus, and that'll be you've violated an isser of carrying. Right. So again, not that there's a problem on your own roof. The problem is that if you were to have transitioned and moved into the other person's roof. So wait. So what about Rabbi Elazar's opinion? He said, when I was in Babel, this is what he used to say. Be'rav mishmei Rav amru, ematat limbo el arba amot, ha'nei shmuel tanu ein lahem el agagan. So now we're trying to figure out how that works out versus the case where we had another version of this machloket of Rav and Shmuel, which we hear from Rabbi Elazar, that you only get, or Rav's opinion is you only get arba amot, but Shmuel says you only get their own roof. So wait, so which one? So then we're trying to figure, does that mean that Rav is both a chomer and a kula? He's both saying you get 4 amot, but even if the 4 amot happens to not be your roof, whereas Shmuel saying you only get the roof. So what's the difference here? Why is it sometimes seeming like that Rav would be more Mekel than Shmuel if he thinks that they're actually this big problem we're worried about? So now we're going to try and re-explain we're going to clarify what Rav and Shmuel's opinions are. So my ein lahen elagagan. What do you mean you only have your roof? Lav the when the school of Shmuel is saying ein lahem elagagan, does that not mean that you can carry the whole area? Umi elima mimat nitin. Do kimna shloi taltel shtei amot begag zeh ushtei amot b'gag zeh. So right, so as in, if they said you can carry the whole thing, then what are we talking about based on the opinion of Rav, who says you can do 2 amot in this roof, 2 amot that roof. So hachanami shtei amot b'gag zeh, shtei amot b'gag zeh. So shouldn't you? Right, so then shouldn't that be a problem? So like, which one is it? So no. So the Breita, right, says that for the Amot should also not be allowed, because that would mean that Rav is being more Mako, which is definitely not his intention by saying Dalad Amot. So clearly that's simply our mistake in our reading. So Amar Rav Yosef, Lo Shmieli Hashmatata. So Rav Yosef says, well, I don't remember these statements being stated. So then, right? So Rav Yosef had an issue where he had a disease, where he forgot some of his learnings. So now Abaye, his student, is reminding him. So Amar le Abaye, At Amart Nihalan, Vaha Amart Nihalan, Ga Gadol Hasamuch Katan, Hagadol Mutar Katan Asur. So no, so Abaye says, no, you told us this, and the resolution of how we can figure this out. The difference is when we have a large roof and a small roof. When we have a large roof next to a small roof, you can carry in the whole large roof, but not the small roof. Okay, not there yet. Okay, right. So that's what we're talking about. Amar Lanala, and you also said about it. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. So then here, now we're getting back to Shmuel's opinion. Lo shanu ela sheyesh diurin al zeh, diurin al zeh. Dahavya laha dekatan b'chitza nidresa. So when do we say that there's a problem between you only get one roof versus you're getting all of the roofs? And we say there being an issue. So like, so we're not trying to figure out what Shmuel's opinion is, opposed to Rav's, and saying like, again, it looked weird before that Rav was being Makel yet being Machmir at the same time. And also we had the issue that one time Shmuel said you could use just your roof, versus one time he said you could use all of the roofs. So we're trying to figure out what's going on here. So this is explaining Shmuel's opinion, which will solve our problem. Because Shmuel said, when did Shmuel say that there's a big roof versus a small roof that is considered to be an issue? That's only when people are actually living on top of the roof and using it. So then the problem becomes that when there's people using both, because the havila, the katan mechitza nidres, because that means that the smaller roof is considered to be a trampled over wall, and therefore it's not, the wall wouldn't necessarily be differentiated between the roofs anymore. But if you don't have multiple people using the roof, only one person is, then he gets to carry the whole roof. The issue is when you have multiple people using the roof, then each of their ability and rights to use it and their accessibility is what makes it a problem. So Amrlai Anahachi Amri Lachos. And that now Rav Yosef is like, now I remember what I was going to say. Lo shanu ela sheyesh mechitza al zeh umechitza al zeh. The gadol mishterei begufufe. Bekatan nifras bimloa. Aval ein mechitza lo al zeh lo al zeh shneim asurid. So the Rav Yosef says, actually, that wasn't the issue. The issue was narrowing and the widening. Do we have a? Okay, here we go. This one. Here we go. Okay. So here's the case, right? We got the small one and the large one. Okay. So let's explain this again. So we have the roofs between the two of them. So now we're trying to figure out why is this Rishuya being separate or being the same. Okay, so this is when we have, again, there's a large roof and then there's a small roof. Again, no transition point where you walk between the two of them. The problem is people are using both. When people do in this house and that house both are having access to the roof, that's a problem, because that means that we have no idea to tell the difference between the roofs, and that's going to create an issue. Mechitzani address it. The roof below isn't actually serving to differentiate anything. That's no good. So then Rav Yosef says back, well, the case is that there's roofs all around the whole thing, and that there's also, therefore there's gefufe, meaning when you walk from one to the other, you can notice the difference, but not the other way around, right? So when you're walking from the large roof to the small roof, right, it's easy to tell because there's these little outcroppings, right? You can tell it narrows, right, very clearly, and that's how you know that we went from one roof to the other roof. And that's how you'll be able to differentiate between the different reshuyot, and that'll solve our issue. But if there's no walls around them, meaning not between them, but then on the sides, that we get this nice effect of we have these these sharp angles sticking right out at us, then you wouldn't be allowed to. So then Abaye responds to Rav Yosef's assertion, and this is similar to the case we had of two different quite a while ago when we had the cases of courtyards, that we relied on the fact that when you walk from one to the other one, depending on if you can notice the walls of transition, that's a big factor. So we're saying, so that's what Rav Yosef applies a similar concept here. So then Abaye is like, wait, he's got a problem with this. V'hadi, you're in a martlon, but you mentioned that the whole thing is tied to people living there. So what are you telling me that's all based on the structure instead? Which one is it? Iyamart l'chu diurin, hachi amri l'chu. So Yosef says, no, if I said diurin, people living there, here's what I meant to say. Lo shanu ela sheyesh mechitza ru'uya l'dira al zeh mechitza ru'uya l'dira al zeh. The gadol mishteri begipufek v'kata nifras bimlo'o. So we would say that, no, what I meant that ability to use, I meant that one of them has proper walls and one doesn't have proper walls, right? So it means the walls are so here we go. When we have this nice roof over here, one of them is a nice roof. They built nice walls up so that they're planning on using it. And the other one has, I guess they put up some sort of walls, right? But they're not really, you wouldn't really feel safe if those are the walls, right? So for instance, let's say, like if you make walls for a sukkah, sometimes you make walls out of strings that aren't necessarily the strongest, and they might not hold up if you leaned against it. It might tip over. So it's not really so ro'il dira. It's not so strong. So therefore, that's the case where we'd say that then the upper one is for sure entirely kosher, right? The bigger one, because it's got real walls, and even the entrance into the other roof is in. We've got the gefufe, we've got the point where they intersect over here. That's clearly distinct, distinguishable. The problem is for the small courtyard is that there is no clear distinction between when you go from the small roof to the larger roof, and that would generate our issue. Right, so that's what Rav Yosef is saying to his students. That's what I would have meant. So again, now we're going to question that then. Aval yesh mechitza ru'il adira al gadol ve'ein ru'il adira al katan afilu katan shari levnei gadol. So I understand that. So that means that since there's a wall on the larger roof, but not a really good wall on the second one, right? Because it's not so safe, not so sturdy. So then, therefore, the people on the larger roof have access to the smaller roof, but not vice versa. So then the question is, my time, why would that be the case? So why do we let the larger roof have access to the smaller roof? Not because we say that the smaller roof, people who had that smaller roof, they gave up the rights to it already. Because if they really planned on using their roof, they would have made sure to put up a proper, safe walls around it so they could use it. But the fact that they didn't really do it, and they just kind of, put these, ramshackle ones that aren't really so safe, and we're planning so therefore that shows that they didn't want to use it. So since they gave up on using the roof, so that means that the larger roof is welcome to head on over and use it instead. Okay. So Kahad Amar Rav Nachman. So similarly, we have a statement that talks about, again, when you're using it and showing clearly that you want it versus when you're not. So Kahad Amar Rav Nachman Asa Sulam Kavul Lagago Hutar B'chol Hagagin Kulan. If let's say we have our series of connected roofs, but the thing is, most people don't use their roofs. So you decided, what a waste of space. It's nice out. I want to use the roof. So what you do is you get a ladder and you nail it to the wall. And that way you have an easy access point to get to the roof whenever you want to use it. So that would mean that you're now allowed to use all the roofs. So, but on the other hand, the other people would not be able to because again, you showed that you're planning on using it, and they don't. So even if they wanted to use it, it wouldn't have an effect on your usage, on your ability to use it. Okay, so Amar Abaye, Bana Aliyah al Gabe Beito, Ba'aslaf Aneha Daka, Arba'a, Hutar, V'chol Hagagin Kulan. Abaye says similarly, if you decided to build an upper story and nobody else did, and you made a Daka, again, that's a small partition, right, to differentiate you from the other roofs, then Hutar, V'chol Hagagin Kulan. So if you had built your little, your little access point over here, right? I'm not sure that. Wait, it's not. Okay, I'm sure people have other pictures of a DACA. Okay, here's some different options for DACA. Okay, this Rashi says there's a there's a small window, right? And Tosfot says that you basically put a little wall between like the exit from your second story to the rest of it. Right, here's some variations on how you give the Tosfot about how you'd be putting up your DACA. DACA is some sort of small structure that you put in addition to whatever else you're building to separate your area from the rest of the area. But in this case, it actually also serves to give you access rights to the rest of the area because nobody else has made any demonstration of their wanting to use the roof. So since you're the one who built second story and built your entrance with this DACA attached. So this is yours saying that I'm planning on not only using my second story, but since you've all given up on your roofs, those roofs are now mine for usage. This is not to say that you actually own the roofs and therefore that if they decided later they would want to, they can't. This is simply saying that for the purposes of this Shabbos, I have usage and they don't, and therefore you can use it while they're not allowed to use it for this Shabbos. Right? You're not actually stealing their property. You're simply claiming usage rights of an area that's not being used. Okay. So, and then Rava qualifies it by a statement. Pa'mim shadaka l'isur. So he says, no, sometimes when you put this little daka, this little partition of some sort, it's a problem. Heichidami. So what's the problem where you're putting up the DACA as a problem? Again, this is some sort of partition, a little gate type thing. Again, pictures are there. So whichever one you think is most likely could very well be right. We don't really, I'm not entirely sure which one it is. So again, depending on, again, your usage of this small partition, how is it helpful or hurtful? So here's the case where it's hurtful. So heichidami, where is the hurtful case? The avida lahade tarbitza de Beit. So what happens is basically on your roof, this partition is facing the garden and it's preventing you from accessing the other roofs. Depending on the way that you constructed your again, where you put this partition, it either could be a partition of allowing you to access it, such as our little doorway version, which is Rashi, right? Or Tosfot, the question is in when we're putting up our wall here, are we trying to allow ourselves access to the other yards, or are we saying that all right, or not? So let's say for the case of for Rashi's opinion, with a small window here. So here it's just like you're basically making a small access point so you can see your yard, right? But it's not really meant to access the rest of them. So clearly your partition here for according to Rashi, right? So you put the wall there. So that's not meant for you to access anything else. That's still meant for you to get a nice view of your garden or to climb down into your garden. It's not meant for you to access the roof. But if you put it on the other side, then it would be. Right, and for Tosfot, with the Tosfot, it would come down to the question of how exactly you position the type of and positioning of the DACA. Is it in a way that's preventing your access to the rest of the roofs, or is it in a position of that's just simply allowing you a clear access point to the rest of the roofs? Okay, and yes, I think we're gonna we're gonna stop here for today. I'm gonna sum up what we're gonna do, and then hopefully I'll send out a recording of tomorrow's daf either later today or tomorrow. Okay, so let's just sum up. So let's sum up to the pictures, because well, we're talking about we moved to the Perikol Agagin, and so now we've got all these nice pictures of things. For the pictures that we didn't cover because they're mentioned in Tosfot. So I will skip them as I jump on through. Okay. So again, we started talking about the question of what is the halachic status of connected roofs. Are they considered to be one reshus or multiple reshuyot? So we said that again we had several things in the Mishnah. We had Rabbi Meir, we had the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir says that it's all one. Chachamim say that they're all separate. And then we had the Rabbi Shimon, who says not only is it the roofs all one, all be considered to be one reshut, but actually even connected courtyards or connected carpet foot as well. Then we discussed the case of what type of wall are we talking about between the what type of differentiation we have between the roofs. So we mentioned if the difference in height is too much, then we say that you can't consider them to be all one reshus. If it's more than 10, we mentioned about the difference between Rav and Shmuel about the distance you're allowed to carry on the roofs. We said again, tie into a Zer Derabanan of your confusing the access from one area to the other area with a Rishut Rabim. That's why again usage of the tall pillar. Could be a problem. Then we said maybe it's an issue only if it's fixed. And then once we mentioned that, we got to the discussion of the area between the two between the two roofs. The question is how separated are they between Rav and Shmuel? And we say that even Rav and Shmuel would agree if there's an actual gap in the floor that's clearly separating between them. But if it's a smooth transition and you can't tell, that's where they're arguing. That's where Rav says only 4 or Shmuel says you can use them all. And then we had another issue, another place where Shmuel seems to imply that you only get your own roof, and we're trying to figure out how does that work. So we mentioned that the difference there was not based on anything else except for the fact of the difference in size between a large roof and a small roof, and that's why we'd say that there's a difference. And then we had to machlok between Rav Yosef. We get opinion Rav Yosef and Abaye talking about between a large roof and a small roof and how you transition. Again, we said the issue of there being if people both will use the roof, whether there being a problem with the bechitza being addressed, that even though Shmuel says there is a roof below, but if you're actually both people are using both roofs, so people can go back and forth, and that's going to mean that means that even though yes we do say good asik bechitza that the wall that's below in the house itself continues on upwards, but because people are ignoring it, therefore it doesn't work. And then we discussed. Somebody said maybe it's based on there being there being full walls on top as well. And then do you notice that when you walk from the large corridor to the large roof to the small roof, you'll notice it, but vice versa you wouldn't. And we mentioned the case that there's also the issue that Rav Yosef is amending his statement and saying really it's nothing to do with people using each roof and going from one roof to the other roof. The issue being the question is could they use it or not? And then it became a question of have I said I'm going to use this roof where nobody else has or not? And then that follows through for the case if you're the only person who has an access point to the roof, because you put up your ladder but nobody else did, so that means that you have use of the roof but nobody else will have access to the roof. Then we discussed the case of the daka, again the partition, and we said it depends on where you place your partition. Again, you made a second story, you made this little daka in between. So if this daka is intended for you to have access to the roof, whereas nobody else is accessing the roof, then you have access rights to the roof again, well as nobody else would, because you're the only one who made an option and made an attempt to use it, and they did not. On the other hand, if you placed your access point towards basically instead of being able to allow you to access the rest of the roof, is simply another way to access your courtyard or your garden or for view instead, then that would not be considered to be a valid. That would not be considered to be a valid access point to say that you're using the whole roof.
Rabbi, a question. Your individual roof. What's the status? Is it a reshus yachid?
It is a reshut hayachid, correct.
So then what's the issue about walking dalet amos on your own roof or two almost into the next roof? Surely it would be from your line another
right.
dalet amos.
Right. So the issue is that we're worried that once you start walking Dalet Amot, that you're going to end up being confused and end up walking too far into the other person's rishos. Meaning,
if it's your own roof, you don't have to worry about Dalet Amos. It's
correct.
It's
Correct. That's on your own roof. But once you transition to the other person's roof, that becomes a problem. So that's why you only get 4 Amot. Because that means that the other person's roof, you could never walk far enough to violate within their shit that you're not supposed to be carrying. You can never walk far enough to be over on an Isser. Because you would have to have walked a full 4 in the other person's roof to have violated anything.
okay.
So that would be the issue. Excellent question, though. Okay. Clear for everybody?
Clear enough.
Yeah. So this is because of all these complicated issues. This is why we generally try to make an Eruv, because it's very confusing. Make an Eruv, it's like the Eruv's up, Baruch Hashem. I don't have to have a headache this Shabbos. So,
right.
Yeah.
Correct. Good Shabbos. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Shabbos,
Thanks,
everybody.
Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
What time?